It's time for Agriculture, presented by Turkana Farms in Germantown, New York, a small-scale producer of heritage breed livestock and a wide array of vegetables and berries on just over 39 acres. They also produce a full array of garden vegetables, many of them heirloom varieties raised naturally, as well as an assortment of berries, including raspberries, blackberries, gooseberries, black, red, and white currants, mulberries, and elderberries. And now, here's Mark Scherzer.
If you, like me, are sheltering in place, perhaps you're experiencing a similar sense of what I'd call dislocation at this location. What was once familiar now seems tinged with strangeness. What was once comforting and safe now seems fraught with risk. Take the passage of time. When your time's not punctuated by activities such as going to work, or periodic community activities or social gatherings, the days become harder to keep track of. For a time, I was acutely aware of how many days had passed since activities that we now know, in retrospect, presented higher risk for exposure to coronavirus. That Jane Birkin concert, the afternoon spent with a friend, the restaurant dinners and rides on crowded rush-hour subway trains. But now that I'm well past the usual 12-day period from exposure to symptoms, I seem to have entered a time warp in which what day it is hardly matters. Every day follows more or less the same pattern, engaged in the same activities, with, if you're lucky like me, the same companions. April Fool's Day came and went without our customary Turkana Farm April Fool's Bulletin. In part, it's that I couldn't think of how to alter our current reality in a joking way. One of our April Fool's Day staples in past years was describing new Turkana Farms products or services that were close enough to reality that the reader might be taken in, to the point that we received requests from the gullible for purchase of our freshly laid chocolate-flavored eggs, or for tickets to our luau to celebrate our pineapple harvest. But what new products might I offer now? Personal protective masks made of our felted caracal wool, or farm-crafted ventilators constructed of fireplace bellows and garden hoses? Would anyone find that funny? If you're sick or worried about a friend or family member who's sick, focusing each day on the state of their symptoms or calculating how their needs will mesh with the availability of ventilators? Surely not. I also skipped April Fool's, though, because in a crisis of this momentous proportion, the significance of any particular day diminishes. We will even lose the traditional ways to mark far more significant holidays like Easter and Passover this year, deepening our sense of time warp. When a lost sense of time overlaps with a lost sense of place, the effect is even more dislocating. For those of us fortunate enough to still have work, doing that work at home changes our sense of what home is. It's no longer demarcated as a place for only certain activities. And when it becomes every place, it really becomes no place. For those stuck inside with no productive activity required, it becomes more of a prison. And when guidance tells us that there's danger of making those you live with sick, emphasizing such advice as the need to clean shared surfaces frequently, home loses part of its sense of a refuge from the dangers of the world. One wonders, indeed, whether there's any longer any such thing as a safe place. Hospitals, once perceived as havens of safe care, are increasingly viewed as reservoirs of infection and zones of high danger. Or consider food markets. I went yesterday to a delightful, well-stocked food market, which I once would have viewed as a most mundane pleasure, and found it transformed into a minefield of insecurity. A majority of my fellow shoppers were masked and highly conscious of maintaining distance, but a significant minority did neither. Sometimes, it seemed, assertively, the need to be consistently on guard against others innocently engaged, to maneuver around them and suspect whether they were carrying a lethal threat in their breath or on their hands, transformed the sense of a grocery store from a routine activity where one could luxuriate in one's choices to a danger zone where the emphasis was on getting out quickly. Facing such dislocations, I'm more grateful than ever for the refuge of the outdoors. It's a gratitude I've heard expressed by a number of friends. A doctor friend in New York City who sends out curated coronavirus updates daily to colleagues, friends, and family, and then clears his head with walks in Riverside Park. A friend isolating completely on his own at his Norfolk, Connecticut home, whose spirits rise and fall according to whether it's been a day he can work outside or a day of confinement. And a friend in Washington, D.C., who's fighting the decision of his apartment building's management to close the building roof garden in purported conformance to city edicts. The closure perversely deprives the residents of a space which made safe social distancing easy in a completely unenclosed space. Here on the farm, of course, there is no restriction on being outside, and it poses no conceivable risk to ourselves or others. I've been taking great pleasure in seeing the chives and rhubarb noticeably taller each day, and the early apple and magnolia blossoms opening. Being able to see the daily progression of blooms and growth helps restore a sense of progression of time, even in this timeless environment. Getting out of the house restores a sense of a world larger than one's interior space. Daily chores have always been one of the most tedious aspects of farm life, a rote routine of feeding and watering the animals morning and evening. There's a reason the word chore has an undesirable connotation. I was surprised yesterday, though I perhaps should not have been, when Troy, Eric, and I all volunteered almost competitively to do the evening chores. Doing chores is a purposeful activity. It's out of the house and it's mostly outdoors. We all wanted to do it, and we divided up the tasks among us. There are obviously safety issues when people in cities share confined elevators to get to the outdoors, but it does strike me that for those who can get there in a non-risky fashion, there should be a balance between inside and outdoor existence. It can be done safely, maintaining social distance, and it should be encouraged to get people through this ordeal sanely.
Agriculture is underwritten by Turkana Farms, LLC, a small-scale producer of heritage-bred livestock and a wide array of vegetables and berries on just over 39 acres in Germantown, New York. More information, 518-537-3815.